This is Under Review, the show that talks about Colorado sports with a sprinkling of national sports stories as well. I'm Jordan Long. To start the show off, Derek Wolfe signed a one-day contract to actually retire as a member of the Denver Broncos, and it ended his NFL career. Now let's take a look back at his NFL career. Also, the reason why he picked the Denver Broncos is because that is where his NFL journey started. So let's take a look at the career of Derek Wolfe. Now, Derek Wolfe spent his college career at the University of Cincinnati. You could tell Derek Wolfe was going to play in the NFL. If you look at his college stats, they were actually pretty good. In 44 games for the University of Cincinnati, which lasted from 2008 to 2011, Wolfe totaled 162 tackles and 19 and a half sacks during his college career. Now, the Broncos looked at Derek Wolfe as a can't-miss player in the second round, 36th overall in the 2011 NFL Draft. In his rookie year, Wolfe showed why the Broncos picked him. He had 40 tackles and 6 sacks in his rookie year. That was just a taste of what was going to come for Derek Wolfe. In 2015, the year that the Denver Broncos won Super Bowl 50, sure, the Broncos had Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware, but those two players actually took the pressure off of Derek Wolfe because he could play his game. In the magical season where the Broncos won Super Bowl 50, Wolfe had 49 tackles and 5.5 sacks. Basically, with Ware and Von Miller, like I said, Derek Wolfe could play his game because he was able to get to the quarterback. Now, Derek Wolfe stayed in Denver until the 2019 season. So at the end of the 2019 season, I was really surprised that the Broncos let him go because we will get there in a minute, but he had a career year. Now, the Broncos went to the playoffs 3 times with Wolfe and advanced to Super Bowl 48 and Super Bowl 50. Of course, we know that they won Super Bowl 50. In his postseason career with Denver, he appeared in 5 playoff games. In those games, Wolfe had 21 tackles and 2.5 sacks. Not bad for a defensive lineman in the postseason. Once the end of the 2019 season happened, I was very surprised that going into the free agency of 2019, that the Broncos didn't re-sign Derek Wolfe. Here is why. He had his most productive year with 7 sacks. That should have said, hey, let's re-sign him. Well, the Broncos let him go, and Wolfe was a free agent for the first time in his career, and only time in his career. He agreed to a contract with Baltimore to play for them in 2020. Now, it was pretty team-friendly, as it costed the Baltimore Ravens not that much in terms of NFL contracts. It was a $3 million contract, but it could be up to $6 million with incentives for the 2020 season. Not a lot for him, but the Ravens thought it was worth the risk. Anyway, in 2020, Wolfe had 51 tackles and only 1 sack. You know, that tells me, hey, they should have let him go. That is, the Ravens shouldn't let him go after the 2020 season. Somehow 51 tackles and 1 sack equaled a contract extension, and it was for 3 years, and I'm still confused on why the Ravens did that. But it was a 3-year contract extension with the Baltimore Ravens. Now, last year, he didn't appear in a game last year. In training camp, the Ravens had joint practices with the Carolina Panthers, where Wolfe suffered an injury. It kept him out of the regular season after he had hip surgery, and that actually basically ended his NFL career. The Ravens cut him this season, but reached an injury settlement with Wolfe. Wolfe knew it was time to walk away from the game. You know, there's a lot of players that said, hey, let's have hip surgery and let's try to get back to the NFL. Nope, not him. He listened to his body, and the body said, I can't play the NFL game anymore. Wolfe knew there was one place he wanted to retire, and that was in the Mile High City as a member of the Denver Broncos. Now, he agreed to a one-day contract and actually signed a one-day contract, and now he will always be a part of Broncos country because of the fact that he won Super Bowl 50 and signed a contract to retire here. But in 108 games for the Broncos, he was productive with 33 sacks and 299 tackles. Of course, he helped Denver win Super Bowl 50. His 33 sacks are 7th in Broncos history. Pretty good to be in the top 10. Of course, number 1 is Von Miller. No matter what, Derek Wolfe will always have a special spot in Broncos country and Broncos history. What I mean by that is he was part of the no-fly zone, which was a nickname for the Denver Broncos defense that won Super Bowl 50. Now, if you look at Derek Wolfe, he has a chance to be placed in the Broncos Ring of Fame, which is the Broncos Hall of Fame, because he was one of the best Broncos defensive linemen to ever play the NFL game. Now, even if he isn't in the Broncos Ring of Fame, he still goes down as one of the better defensive linemen to ever play for the Denver Broncos. Not only is he top 10 in sacks in Broncos history, but of course, he was part of the Broncos defense that won Super Bowl 50. So congratulations to Derek Wolfe on a great career, and Derek Wolfe will always be part of Broncos country since he retired from the organization, or with the organization, as he agreed to a one-day contract. Now we're going to stay with the Denver Broncos. Of course, their first preseason game is 1 week from Saturday when they take on the Dallas Cowboys. They're also going to have joint practices leading up to that with Dallas. On Tuesday, it was the first time they put pads on for practice. So this past Tuesday, they had pads for the first time. Now, the NFL is strict on how many practices players can wear pads. They could finally hit one another. The risk, though, and it doesn't matter if you're in pads or just in t-shirts, it's injuries. You never want to see players have injuries. A star player could actually sustain an injury, costing them the season. Well, that actually happened for the Denver Broncos. During Tuesday's practice, Denver actually lost star receiver Tim Patrick for the year. Now, Patrick caught a pass from quarterback Russell Wilson, and when he landed, he went down and he was in pain. The thing is, though, it was a non-contact play. You never want to hear that because your mind immediately goes to a torn ACL. Once the news came out, it wasn't a surprise that Tim Patrick suffered a torn ACL. That will actually end his season before it started. Horrible news if you're the Denver Broncos. Patrick was one of the most reliable Broncos receivers to catch the football for the Broncos. In the past 2 years, Patrick caught 104 passes for 1,476 yards and 11 touchdowns. In his career, which goes back to 2018, he has 143 receptions for 2,009 yards and 12 touchdowns. 14 yards per catch, which is pretty impressive. The Broncos saw the potential in him, agreeing to a 3-year contract extension worth $34 million. That's throughout that 3-year extension, and it would keep him in Denver until 2024. Also, Denver thought they would have a great receiving core of Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, and of course, Tim Patrick. Patrick was going to line opposite of Courtland Sutton, and Jerry Jeudy would be the slot receiver. Well, those plans are now kind of derailed now that Tim Patrick is out for the year. Patrick is out with a torn ACL and will miss the season. So the question is, who will step up in Patrick's place? Quarterback Russell Wilson will still find Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton. The tight ends will need to step up their play, and Alberto and Greg Dulcich. Right there, those are weapons for Wilson in Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, Alberto, and Greg Dulcich. Then out of the backfield, the running backs will be involved in Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon. The Broncos still need to find a wide receiver to play with Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton. Looking at the Broncos roster, KJ Hamler, who I did like when he was drafted, but he will get the first shot. The Broncos drafted him in the second round of the 2020 NFL Draft, and he's only appeared in 16 NFL regular season games. The reason why he hasn't seen the field a lot is because of injuries. In 2020, Hamler dealt with a hamstring injury, and last year he tore his ACL. He did show flashes of what he could do at the NFL level with 35 receptions for 455 yards and 3 touchdowns. Hamler will probably get the first crack. He can play the wide receiver position, and he rarely drops the ball. So that is key for Russell Wilson, is you need a wide receiver who does not drop the ball. The only downside with KJ Hamler is, can he stay healthy for a full season? If so, then that should help. Plus, I think if Hamler plays well in preseason games, he should earn his way as the third receiver on the Broncos depth chart. After that, Kendall Hinton has his chance to show the coaching staff something. We all know that Kendall Hinton started a game for the Denver Broncos at quarterback. It was a very weird situation, but it occurred in Week 12 of the 2020 season against the New Orleans Saints. The reason he started was the Broncos quarterbacks on the roster were out with COVID protocols. And the NFL, they didn't want to move this game. The Broncos wanted to so they could have, healthy quarterbacks, but the NFL said no, and setting the Broncos as an example of what not to do. It went about as well as one would think it did. In that game, Hinton was 1 of 9 for 13 yards, 2 picks, and no touchdowns. Denver actually lost to the New Orleans Saints 31-3, and it was a bad game for both teams to watch. It was boring, I have to say. But the fact of the matter is I thought it was very unfair of the NFL to say, we're not going to move this game. You're going to have to find a quarterback. The Broncos went with Kendall Hinton, and it didn't go well. Now, for Hinton as a wide receiver, he's still a project, but he's getting better. In his career, Hinton caught 15 passes for 175 yards and 1 touchdown. Could he be the wide receiver for Denver? I mean, sure, but he hasn't shown he can handle those duties. Hinton can always be a special teams player. He may show me something during the preseason, and I could change my tune. For right now, I do not see Kendall Hinton as a third wide receiver on the depth chart. Then there is Tyree Cleveland, who was drafted by the Denver Broncos in the 7th round of the 2020 NFL Draft. Cleveland doesn't have much experience at the position, with 17 games played with only 63 receiving yards. Not what I would call confidence there. Another guy that they could try at wide receiver is Montrell Washington, but Montrell Washington is mostly going to be the punt returner. I don't know how great of an option that is for the Broncos to have Montrell Washington as their wide receiver, because he's going to be the kick and punt returner, and the Broncos selected him in the 5th round of this year's NFL Draft. So let's just say Denver doesn't like those options and wants to add depth at the position. Well, they could look at free agency, and honestly, there's one veteran who I think the Broncos should look at, and that is Emmanuel Sanders, who's a free agent wide receiver. Now, Sanders played in Denver before from 2014 and was traded on October 22nd, 2009 to the San Francisco 49ers. So basically, they traded him on October 22nd of the 2019 NFL season. With Denver, Sanders was actually productive. In 78 games, Sanders got 404 passes for 5,361 yards and 28 touchdowns. It could work in the Mile High City since it did before. I mean, he was traded, but the Broncos gave Emmanuel Sanders the best chance to win. The Broncos are a better team now than when they traded Emmanuel Sanders in 2019. Plus, Sanders can be the number 2 wide receiver, which puts Jeudy back in the slot. Wilson could have 3 playmakers at wide receiver: Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, and, of course, Emmanuel Sanders. The thing is, though, Denver might go through the preseason to figure out who their number 3 wide receiver or number 2 wide receiver is on the depth chart. So they're going to stand pat, I would think. The worst case scenario is the receivers behind Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton struggle. Then Denver has a problem. If that happens, Denver has options called free agency or waiting to see who gets cut when the last cuts happen. So the Broncos do have options, but we will have to see what happens. For now, though, Denver knows that losing Tim Patrick leaves a big void on the offense, but they will figure out how to replace him, and hopefully they do, so the Broncos can be successful this season. Now we're going to end with the NBA. Carmelo Anthony is still a free agent. Could he go back to the Lakers where he spent last year? Sure, but he was a bench player and knew his role. Plus, I don't think it really worked there just because you had LeBron James and Anthony Davis out for the year. But, I mean, they did play a little bit, and then Russell Westbrook was also there. It just didn't work with LeBron James and Anthony Davis with Russell Westbrook and Carmelo Anthony. But Anthony scored 13.3 points and added 1 assist and had 4.2 rebounds per game. It just didn't seem at this point like he will go back to LA. So where could he go? One place he could go, but I'm not sure how much interest there is in the Mile High City, is the Denver Nuggets. That's where he started his career, was with the Denver Nuggets. That lasted from 2003 until he was traded to the Knicks on February 22nd, 2011. Now, Denver was willing to build a team around Carmelo Anthony as the star, and it was a chance to build a championship team to win a ring for Carmelo Anthony. He wanted to go elsewhere, but you know what? That is right. He forced his way out. With the Nuggets, Anthony became their best player when Carmelo Anthony was with the Denver Nuggets. In 564 regular season games for the Nuggets, he averaged 24.8 points. So that is Carmelo Anthony's stats. I should say that is Carmelo Anthony's stats with the Denver Nuggets was 564 regular season games. So 564 regular season games where he averaged 24.8 points, 3.1 assists, and 6.3 rebounds per game. Rebounds are great, but what I didn't like about his defense is the fact that he couldn't play defense. He never seemed interested. Anyway, with his play, the Nuggets earned a playoff spot 7 times, including going to the Western Conference Finals in 2009. The thing about the 2009 NBA playoffs is the Nuggets probably could have won that series over the Lakers if not for 2 bad inbound passes. So the fact of the matter is I still look at the 2009 season as a season where the Nuggets should have won a ring. Anyway, that was the closest Anthony came to an NBA championship. Now that he's a free agent, would Denver even make sense? Anthony knows he's not going to be a starter in this league. He would be coming off the bench. I think it makes sense if the Nuggets want to add another shooter at the small or power forward position. Denver has a small forward in Michael Porter Jr. Assuming Porter Jr. is healthy, he will be a 3-point shooter and can drive, taking the pressure off of Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. Porter can also rebound, averaging 6.1 rebounds in his career. Of course, he missed all but 9 games last year with a back injury that required surgery. Adding Carmelo Anthony gives the Nuggets another shooter and scorer. After that, not a lot of depth at the small forward position. I don't see him being a power forward with the Denver Nuggets. They have that covered with Aaron Gordon and Jeff Green. Does Melo even actually help the Nuggets as an even more dangerous team in the NBA, especially in the tough Western Conference? On offense, yes. He is a guy who can make a shot anywhere on the court. Anthony could even help the second team. That is those backup players. That is actually what hurt the Nuggets in the playoff loss to Golden State. They didn't have a great second unit or a scorer. And that's the thing about the Golden State Warriors. They had a second unit and they could score. That's basically what determined the series for the Denver Nuggets and the fact that they didn't move on. Okay, I can see where that would help the Nuggets as they try to knock off Golden State in the Western Conference. His problem is defense. The Nuggets want a defensive player. Anthony, like I said, does not like to play defense. I mean, he will guard his man, but that is about it. He'd rather play offense. I would much rather keep the team the Nuggets have right now, who can actually play defense and start runs. I just don't know if Anthony would be a fit for this team. And how would the fans react? Would they welcome Carmelo Anthony back with open arms? When he was traded, I was devastated. I didn't like it. I didn't like the fact that he left. But the thing is, though, I have actually forgiven Carmelo Anthony. I still don't like that he forced his way out, but I have forgiven him. I mean, he left in the worst way possible, demanding a trade out of Denver. It really rubbed fans the wrong way. That was 11 years ago. Get over it, fans. I get why people don't like Carmelo Anthony. He forced a trade. Now, if he comes back, could people forgive that? That is fans of the Denver Nuggets. It shows he wants to play for the Nuggets for probably the last year of his career. Denver has a chance to be a top four team in the Western Conference. Why not let Carmelo Anthony be a part of that? And who knows? Maybe the Nuggets end up winning a championship. That would be great. I want a parade for the Denver Nuggets. Also, Carmelo Anthony would have to change numbers. He's done that before in his career, but when he played in the Mile High City, he wore number 15. There ain't no way he's going to get that number back. Why? Because the best center in the NBA and the back-to-back MVP wears that, Nikola Jokic. In the end, the Nuggets will do what is best for the basketball team moving forward. Calvin Booth might consider it. That's because he will consider all options. But I'm not sure Carmelo Anthony makes sense. So I don't see Booth going after Carmelo Anthony. He isn't the veteran the Nuggets need. Don't get me wrong. Every team should have a veteran or veterans on their team that has played in the NBA playoffs before. I just don't think Carmelo Anthony actually helps this team. The thing about Carmelo Anthony, too, is his best days in the NBA are behind him. If this was the Carmelo Anthony of 3 or 4 years ago, I'd say yes, bring him in to be a bench player and a role player. But right now, it doesn't make any sense. He is 38 years old. Carmelo Anthony doesn't have a lot of basketball left in him. He could still want to wait to find out if there's a team that wants him, so this could carry on into the regular season. But the worst case is he hangs it up. Since the writing could be on the wall, that is if no team calls him. If no team calls him, he should probably hang it up. There might be a couple who have called him. I don't know for a fact, but he is still a free agent. Time will only tell, but it seems like Carmelo Anthony's playing days are over in the NBA because he is not a star in the game anymore. He's a role player, and I don't know how happy he is to be that, so he might hang it up. I'm Jordan Long. This has been Under Review. Read my blog that I write Monday through Thursdays with podcasts on Fridays at sports-scoop.com. Check out all the shows we have on the Sideline Sports Network because we have shows every single day. Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any of them. This has been a Sideline Sports production.